West Africa has become a region of intense geopolitical conflict. In the past few years, there have been a series of military coups, and some of these in countries like Burkina Faso and Mali have led to the rise of nationalist governments that have opposed the neo-colonial policies of the West, in particular of France. France colonized most of West Africa, and still today, France maintains control over much of the economies in these countries through the extraction of natural resources by French mining companies, and Paris also controls these countries' monetary sovereignty by imposing a currency on them called the CFA franc, which is a colonial currency going back to the time when these countries were French colonies. And under this arrangement, these countries in West Africa essentially have no control over their own monetary policy. So what we've seen in West Africa is a rise of popular movements supporting some of these military governments and asserting national sovereignty. And the most recent example of this was in late July, a pro-Western leader in Niger was overthrown and a new military government was declared. This government has cut ties with France and told Paris that it needs to take its troops out of the country, although the French government has refused to do so. It has asserted national control over its natural resources, and despite the fact that Niger and its neighbors in West Africa, Burkina Faso and Mali, are extremely poor, the majority of their populations are in poverty. Despite that, the top export of these countries is gold, and much of that gold is extracted by Western corporations, and the people of these countries don't benefit from the vast riches of their natural resources. Well, what we're seeing is an attempt to change that. And even Western media outlets have been forced to admit that the military government in Niger is very popular. A study conducted by The Economist, which is a right-wing pro-Western media outlet, it is very biased in the interest of NATO and the Western powers. Even The Economist was forced to acknowledge that 78% of people in Niger support the nationalist policies of the military government, and 73% of people in Niger want the military government to stay in power, whereas just 27% of people in Niger want the pro-Western leader, Mohamed Bazoum, to be put back in power. We have seen mass demonstrations of support in Niger for the nationalist policies of this new government and opposition to the neo-colonial policies of France and the United States. France and the United States have tried to manipulate an African organization called ECOWAS, that is the Economic Community of West African States, and the Western powers are trying to use this organization as cover to provide multilateral marketing to essentially invade Niger, to overthrow the nationalist government, and to reinstall the pro-Western regime. ECOWAS, which is currently led by Nigeria, a Western ally, has made plans for a military intervention to send troops into Niger, and the organization gave Niger a deadline saying on the 6th of August, if the military government did not step down and reimpose the pro-Western leader, they were going to invade. Well, what happened? On the 6th of August, tens of thousands of people in Niger filled the central stadium in the capital, Niamey, and held a mass demonstration of support for the nationalist policies of the military government, condemning the threats of foreign intervention. And by the way, an interesting fact, that stadium in the capital of Niger, Niamey, was actually built by China. It was not built by the Western powers who have exploited and taken so much wealth out of West Africa. Instead, it was China that has built significant infrastructure in Niger, one of the poorest countries in the world. These mass demonstrations are clear evidence of the fact that the majority of people in Niger, who are known as Nigerians, not to be confused with Nigerians from Nigeria, these demonstrations reflect the fact that the majority of Nigerians do support the nationalist policies of this military government, as was admitted by The Economist, this Western media outlet that acknowledged that 3/4 of Nigerians support the policies of the military government. However, while the Western powers and their allies in West Africa are threatening to invade Niger, that's much easier said than done, because the reality is that many countries in the region staunchly oppose the possibility of a foreign intervention. The neighboring countries of Mali and Burkina Faso have said that they would consider this an act of war against them. The government of Guinea and also even Chad, a Western ally, have opposed the calls for military intervention. And the nationalist government in Algeria that came to power after a revolution against French colonialism also strongly opposes the possibility of military intervention in Niger. So the Western powers may want to try to launch a military intervention in Niger, like they did in Libya in 2011, or like France did in Mali in 2013 and 2014. But the geopolitical situation is very different today, and there is a lot of opposition to these Western neocolonial policies.
»20 Jahre Afghanistan-Krieg haben 12,3 Milliarden Euro gekostet. Das Ergebnis ist bekannt, ein zerstörtes Land. 28 von 45 Millionen Afghanen sind auf humanitäre Hilfe angewiesen. 10 Jahre Beteiligung am Krieg in Mali, 3,5 Milliarden Euro. Die Islamisten sind stärker denn je und sowohl französische wie auch deutsche Soldaten mittlerweile bei der Bevölkerung regelrecht verhasst. Und jetzt wollen sie Niger zu einem neuen Mali machen. Da frage ich mich, haben sie denn überhaupt nichts gelernt aus ihren ganzen Pleiten? Ja? Mit ihrem Militäreinsatz unterstützen sie eine autoritäre Regierung, die der Opposition verboten hat zu demonstrieren, die auf den gnadenlosen Ausverkauf der Bodenschätze an die ehemalige Kolonialmacht Frankreich setzt. Und während Frankreich weiterhin 30% seines Urans für den Betrieb seiner Atomkraftwerke aus den Minen Nigers bezieht, haben dort 60% der Menschen keinen Zugang zu Strom. Niger gehört durch diese neokoloniale Ausplünderung zu den 10 ärmsten Ländern der Welt. Und ich sage Ihnen, man muss kein Prophet sein, um zu sehen, dass Niger im selben Desaster enden wird wie Afghanistan und Mali zuvor.
Vive le Mali! Vive le Mali! Vive le Burkina! Vive le Russie!